Hello, this is the Earl of Awesome, and today I'm going to talk to you about adventures featuring the Drow, the Dark Elves. Now, the Drow are relatively unpopular amongst gamers and the D&D fan base. Much of the reason for this being Drizzt Do Erdan, the invention of R.A. Salvatore and one of the only good Drow, who kind of, in some opinions, debased them now and made them not as valid as antagonists. Now, I love the Drow, and I love them as antagonists, but I also love them as player characters. Not chaotic good rebels like Drizzt, but evil player characters. And part of the reason for that is inter-party conflict. I love inter-party conflict. I was introduced to the idea playing the Paranoia role-playing game. It's a good game, check it out. But I think Drow are really good for that, because Drow are so ambitious, and they just love to stab each other in the back. So one can have a party of Drow adventurers doing their thing in the Underdark, and they'll fight over treasure, and they'll fight over the party leader position, and they're totally willing to kill each other for things like this, but they won't just do it outright. They'll try to slip poison into each other's food, or they'll try to push each other off a cliff and make it look like an accident. And so they won't openly fight, but they also have to collaborate in order to succeed. So they'll be plotting against each other, but at the same time having to work with each other in the short term. Now, I'm going to talk about an adventure featuring Drow that I ran, and how this worked out, and the adventure concept. Feel free to steal it. Feel free to, use this. So anyway, there was a party of Drow merchants, most of them male, and they kind of operated around the area, around the Drow city of Menzoberranzan. And they would sort of explore the surrounding caves, finding treasures and valuable items to sell inside Menzoberranzan. Now, there were more and more Drow merchants doing this, and they were kind of getting down on their luck. So they decided to do something big, something daring. And this was to steal eggs from a Kotoa nest. The Kotoa are sort of Lovecraftian fishmen, if you haven't read the Monster Manual in great detail. Now, Kotoa, their eggs are a delicacy in Menzoberranzan. So much so that rich Drow are willing to pay quite a lot for them. And sometimes Drow merchants will attempt, and adventurers and treasure hunters will attempt to steal eggs from Kotoa nests and sell them in the city. But this is generally unadvisable, considering how Kotoa have powerful magic at their disposal, and their nests are pretty well guarded. So the Drow adventurers, they pooled their money and hired a apprentice wizard, because that was all they could afford, to teleport them into the midst of a Kotoa nest. But they discovered to their horror that the Kotoa nest was warded against teleportation, and they found themselves flung into this secluded cavern in the Underdark that they had no idea where they were, and they found themselves stranded on this island in the middle of an Underdark sea, with the Kotoa nest nowhere in sight. And they had to find a way off this island and survive the island, while at the same time fighting internally with each other. Not outright, but in more subtle ways. And they ended up finding out that they weren't too far away from the nest, and they decided to give it a whirl anyway. And they went in, and it became more like a standard dungeon crawl, although, they always, there was still some conflict within the party. And two of them ended up dying. And they finally made it out of the nest and were on their way back to the city. And there were only two of them left. And this was a rogue and a wizard. Now, the rogue, just before they were going to go into the city, they were both carrying a bag, stabbed the wizard in the back, took his bag, and went in and sold all the eggs, getting all the riches for himself. That's why I love Drow. because you can use them for a pretty standard dungeon crawl, but it adds a whole new level of complexity, a whole new interesting spin on the classic dungeon crawling experience. This is the Earl of Awesome sharing my musings. Please tell me what you think.